Welcome to Watches with Dennis, and today I want to give my thoughts on Tudor's Black Bay Pro, another watch that was revealed during 2022's Watches and Wonders. And on first glance, I think it's pretty safe to say this is inspired by an Explorer II from Rolex. As we often do, let's go ahead and go through some specifications first before I actually dive into my thoughts aesthetically about the watch. I'm going to go ahead and start with the movement. This watch uses Tudor's in-house caliber, the MT5652. It is a bidirectional self-winding movement with COSC certification. This movement supports a GMT hand, offers a quick set function for the date, and does hack. It features 26 joules, beats at 4 hertz, and has a power reserve of approximately 70 hours. Now, I don't normally discuss when the movement is released, but this movement dates back to 2018, and that's going to tie in a little bit later when we discuss the thickness of this watch. Now, going into some non-movement specifications, the Black Bay Pro is a 39mm diameter watch. It has a lug width of 20mm, a lug-to-lug distance of approximately 47mm, and offers a thickness of 14.6 millimeters. The watch offers 200 meters of water resistance and is a closed caseback. Aesthetically, one can see, if you're familiar with the Rolex Explorer II, that this is taking a lot of design cues from the reference 1655, though I should note the 1655 was a 40mm diameter watch. With the Tudor Black Bay Pro, we do see a satin brushed steel bezel. It is fixed, so you cannot rotate this bezel, and it has 24-hour markings. The watch dial is a matte black, features a bright yellow GMT hand, and features Tudor's trademark snowflake hands for the hour, the second, and the GMT. So what are my overall thoughts on the Tudor Black Bay Pro? I think this watch appeals primarily to those that have been interested in the Rolex Explorer II, specifically the 1655 reference number, and wanted something far more affordable. And far more affordable this is. This watch is $4,000 US, and that's on the steel bracelet. However, you can save a few $100s if you want to go with a black fabric strap, or if you want to go with their hybrid leather rubber strap. As is often the case with Tudor Black Bays, they, while inspired by other classic Rolex designs, often have taken a number of changes and sort of Tudorfied them, if that's a word we can use. The hands being the snowflake are obviously a difference. The color of the GMT hand being yellow versus an orange. The markings on the dial going with round markings for the most part rather than the more rectangular markings that were done on the 1655. The bezel font looks similar, so that's an area where it's close, but as I look at different photos between 1655 and this Black Bay Pro, I'm not sure that they are completely identical. I don't think they are. There are no crown guards on the Black Bay Pro, and there were on the Rolex 1655, so that's another difference. But my point is this won't be mistaken for a Rolex Explorer II 1655. There's enough Tudor DNA here to make it its own thing, which again is something that we're used to in regards to Black Bay watches. Looking at online discussion, the biggest area of concern I have seen is actually the thickness, and I was surprised at just how thick this watch is, especially given just a 39mm case, and that, again, is the 14.6 millimeters of thickness. Now, I've never handled a Rolex Explorer II 1655, and I haven't been able to get my hands on a Tudor Black Bay Pro yet, but I want to go ahead and bring up a Rolex Explorer II I am familiar with because I own it, and that is the 16570. Now, that model is also a 40mm watch, so it's a millimeter larger than the Tudor Black Bay Pro is, but the thickness on the Rolex is only 12.5 millimeters, meaning the Tudor Black Bay Pro is over 2 millimeters thicker than that old Rolex, and this is a 1 millimeter smaller diameter watch, so I found it pretty surprising. I have looked at some comments people have posted online about this watch, and the reaction is mixed to it. There are a lot of people who are very concerned about the thickness. There are others that have said they've handled it or worn it, and they feel that it's not as bad as it sounds on paper, and that it's workable. As near as I can tell, the source of the thickness is likely the decision Tudor had with running with that MT5652 movement. That is not a new movement. And people may have been thinking that they were waiting to release a watch like this in order to come out with a movement to accommodate the 39mm diameter. But obviously that is not the case. This is a GMT movement that they've had for a while now, and they have just dropped it into a 39mm case. But accommodation of that obviously would require a certain level of thickness. And it's my understanding that that is probably where this is coming from. 7.52 millimeters, I believe, is the thickness of the movement alone. So to me, that's really the only major concern with it would be to evaluate the thickness as a potential buyer and decide whether or not you're going to be able to wear it in the ways that you want to wear it. And if so, I don't think it's really going to be a big problem. But I think it's very obvious that they did not go out of their way to try and make this a slim watch. Overall, I think the Tudor Black Bay Pro is a nice, clean-looking watch, but it's not a watch I would be in the market for. A lot of that is driven simply by the fact that since I already own a Rolex Explorer II, even though I don't own a 1655, I have my need for fixed bezel, jumping hour, GMT style watches satisfied. And I actually prefer the aesthetic of the 16570 and the more modern font used on the bezel than I do on this. And then the other major difference is I've always, when it came to the Rolex Explorer II, preferred polar dial looks to the black. I think both look really good, but I prefer polar, and this is not, at least at this time, in a polar option, so that would rule it out for me. But I'd love to know what your guys' thoughts are. Please comment below if you like the look of this Tudor Black Bay Pro. Are you concerned about the thickness of the watch? Do you think it's fine? Have you been able to handle one? And if so, could you give your thoughts on it? Other than that, if you enjoyed the video, please do give it a like. And if you want to be notified when I have new videos out, just click the subscribe button. Everybody, have a great day.